Well, Costello.
Wait. This is what you get when you try to work with somebody, Anyway, today's passage is yet another example of the cluelessness that some of the disciples have been known to exhibit. You have to wonder sometimes why he picked those guys. It is baseball playoff season. And last night, one of the teams in the National League won the pennant. And the World Series is coming up. And I know these things, and I don't even follow baseball. It is highly possible that baseball has given us one of the best examples of cluelessness outside the Bible. I give you who's on first. Now.
Well, Costello, I'm going to Fresno with you. The Grizzlies manager gave me a job as coach for as long as you're on the team.
Look, Abbott, if you're the coach, you must know all the players.
I certainly do.
Well, I've never met the guys. So you have to tell me their names and then I'll know who's playing on the team.
Well, let's see. On the bags, we have who's on first, what's on second, I don't know who's on third.
That's what I want to find out.
I say, who's on first, what's on second, I don't know who's on third.
Are you the manager?
Yes.
You're going to be the coach too?
Yes.
And you don't know the fellows' names?
Well, I should.
Then who's on first?
Yes.
I mean the fellow's name.
Who?
The guy on first.
Who?
The first baseman.
Who?
The guy playing...
Who's on first?
I'm asking you who's on first.
That's the man's name.
That's whose name?
Yes.
Well, go ahead and tell me.
That's it?
That's who?
Yes.
Look, you got a first baseman.
Certainly.
Who's playing first?
That's right.
When you pay off the first baseman every month, who gets the money?
Every dollar.
All I'm trying to find out is the guy's name on first base.
Who?
The guy that gets...
That's it.
Who gets the money?
He does every dollar. Sometimes his wife comes down and collects it.
Whose wife?
Yes.
James and John seem to have no more idea what Jesus was talking about than Costello did in this famous comedy routine. They thought they were asking to be his closest advisors, his lieutenants, as it were, when he defeated the Romans and became king of Israel, and everybody would know that. Whether they simply weren't listening, or they were just too self-absorbed to hear what he'd been saying, nobody really knows. Just before they asked this question, Jesus said to them, "See, we're going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be handed over to the priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death. They will hand him over to the Gentiles. They will mock him and spit upon him and flog him and kill him, and after 3 days he will rise again." And in just moments after this third time that he has told them of his coming death and resurrection, these two come forward and say, "We want to sit on your left and right hands in your coming glory." Reading this, we're not sure whether to laugh or cry or shake our heads or what. Maybe they were all thinking the same thing, wanting to be the ones closest to Jesus, but James and John, the sons of thunder, were the only ones who had the nerve to go up and ask for what they wanted. We laugh or shake our heads at these two sons of Zebedee, but I think we really aren't that much different from them. We may not be asking to sit at Jesus' right and left hands, But how many of us sort of pray that First Christian Church can be restored to its former glory? We were a big influential church. Our Bible study groups overflowed the building, had to meet in other places around town because even in this huge, beautiful building, there wasn't room for everyone. There are pictures in the church office of hundreds of people out in front of the building, and that's just the Sunday school classes in 1933. Today, instead of hundreds, we count 35 to 50 in worship, maybe 10 in Sunday school, and we get really excited when a special event fills the sanctuary, usually music related. We would love to grow the church back to the way it was in 1933 or 1963, but it is no longer 1933 or 1963 or any of those long ago glory days. The world has changed. How people view church and church membership has changed. Regular attendance no longer means showing up every single Sunday the way it did when I was growing up. Today it might mean showing up once a month or every other week because there are so many other demands on our time. Used to be nothing else happened on Sundays except church. No shopping, no nothing. And that's different too. And if I'm being honest, which I suppose I have to having just said that, sometimes I think if I could just preach well enough, we could fill this place. I could fill this place. Or if Leah managed to recruit half the high school, and they all came to youth group and they brought their families and they could fill this place. Or if Bring a Friend Sunday resulted in every single person showing up with at least one other person who's never been here before, and they keep coming back every single week and they bring their families and we could fill this place. What if every Sunday was Bring a Friend Sunday? Anyway, we may not ask these things out loud, as James and John asked to be on the left and right hands of Jesus. The other disciples didn't ask, but I bet they were thinking about it. And some of us sit here, and we gather together and we have meetings and we plan ways to stay alive and grow. Because we don't know what the future will bring for a small church that used to be a big one. And we're afraid for the future. The disciples were afraid. And maybe, just maybe, James and John were trying to deal with their fear by looking for a future that is secure. They were on their way to Jerusalem. And their rabbi, their Lord, kept telling them, I'm going to die there. And they didn't want to hear it, but they knew that the temple leaders opposed him. And they knew that his preaching was really upsetting some powerful people. And they knew that John the Baptist had lost his head, literally, not that long ago for preaching against Herod. They probably weren't as stupid as we think they were. But they were that afraid. And when we are afraid, we do everything we can to make ourselves feel safe. So James and John asked to be close at Jesus' left and right hands. And Jesus said to them, can you do what I'm doing? And they said, sure we can. Because they didn't quite understand what he was asking. Many times when this passage is preached, we look at Jesus' words to those sons of Zebedee as a threat. We often interpret, you will drink the cup I am drinking, as meaning, being a leader in this group is not what you were hoping for. Instead of power and wealth, you too will die a horrible, painful death. But what if Jesus is simply reassuring them? What if this is not so much a threat as a promise? What if what Jesus is telling them is actually your fear will not always drive you the way it does us today. You will be empowered by the baptism of the Spirit to follow me into places you can't even imagine right now. You will drink of the cup I drink from, the cup of salvation and healing. You will know peace in your hearts. You will be faithful no matter what comes to pass. What if that is what we're supposed to hear in this passage? What if Jesus is saying in yet another way, do not be afraid? Jesus tells them, as he has many times before, that whoever would be first must be last. He says, whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as ransom for many. Once again, Jesus is asking his disciples, his followers, us, to give everything, with no promise of a reward of the sort we typically think of. Not give and you will be rich and successful, but give because you love me. Not go out into the community and do good and I will fill these pews, but do good because you love me. Serve others because you love them. Give of yourself whatever you can give. If you have money, give money. If you have time, give time. If you have special talents, share those. Jesus only wants one thing from us. Everything. Our hearts, our love, our service, our lives. Jesus gave it all for us, and he asks us for the same. So ask yourselves, my brothers and sisters, what can I give? Please stand and sing with me.